You know when they say blood is thicker than water? When they say family is supposed to protect you, love you, and stand by your side? Well, whoever came up with that never met my father, because it was him, my own father, the man who was supposed to teach me right from wrong, the man who once carried me on his shoulders when I was a kid. It was him who threw me into a nightmare that stole 37 years of my life. My name is Ethan Howard. I was born in August 1958 in a small town in Louisiana, a quiet, simple town where everybody knew each other, where secrets didn't stay secrets. For long except the one that destroyed my life, today I'm 66 years old, sitting on the cold, metal bed of this halfway house. I'm finally free, but freedom tastes bittersweet when the world you knew is gone, when your youth, your dreams, and your future were all left to rot inside a prison cell. And now, after all these years, I'm finally ready to tell you the truth that cost me almost 4 decades of my life. If you're watching this, let me know in the comments where you're from. I want to know how far this story can reach. I want to know that my voice and my pain are finally being heard. And if you can, please hit the like button and subscribe. It's the only way these stories, the ones they tried to silence, can finally be told. I grew up in a modest house, a one-story home with chipped white paint, a broken front gate, and a porch swing that creaked louder than anything else in the neighborhood. My mother, Deborah, was the kind of woman who worked herself to the bone for her family. She cleaned houses for wealthy families in town, sweet, kind, quiet, but broken. Inside, a woman who wore her sadness like a second skin. My father, Richard Howard, was something else entirely. A mean man. The kind of man whose footsteps alone could make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. To the town, he was charming. He owned the local auto repair shop. Everyone loved Rick, smiling, shaking hands, offering free oil changes to the church pastor. But at home, he was a tyrant, a bully, a man whose love came with fists, whose words were weapons sharper than knives. And then there was my older brother, Terry, 2 years older, taller, stronger. And just like my father, he was the golden child. As a kid, I always felt like I didn't belong in my own home. I was the mistake, the disappointment, the one who wasn't supposed to be there. "You're useless, Ethan," my father would say, slamming his beer on the kitchen table. "You'll never be anything. Look at Terry. That's how a real man acts." I learned early on to stay quiet, to stay small, to not be noticed, because being noticed meant pain. But I had one escape, working with my hands. I loved fixing things, bicycles, old radios, lawn mowers, anything broken. I could make it work again, and for a while, that was enough. Enough to survive, enough to dream, until it wasn't. I was 19 years old when my life ended. It was a Tuesday, May 16, 1977. A day that started like any other. I went to work at Mr. Collins' hardware store, stocked shelves, fixed a few broken tools for customers, laughed with old Mrs. Green. When she brought her leaky garden hose again, I clocked out at 5 p.m., walked home like I always did. The sun was still out. Kids were riding bikes. Sprinklers watered perfectly trimmed lawns. Everything seemed normal, until I turned the corner onto my street and saw the flashing red and blue lights, police cars everywhere, neighbors standing on their porches, hands over their mouths. My stomach dropped. What the hell? I sprinted toward my house, and that's when I saw them dragging him out. My father, handcuffed, head down, but not like someone ashamed, no. He was smirking, and then the sheriff turned to me. "Ethan." "Howard?" "Why, yeah. You're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Jennings." I don't remember much after that. My ears were ringing, my legs went weak. Sarah Jennings, a sweet girl from the neighborhood, 2 years younger than me. We went to the same school. She used to come by the hardware store sometimes. We were friends, just friends. She had been found dead strangled, left behind the old train yard, and somehow they said it was me. Me. In the interrogation room, they told me. They had a witness, someone who saw me near the scene. They showed me pictures of tools from my father's shop found near her body. They said my fingerprints were on them. I told them over and over, that's not possible. I didn't do this. I swear to God, I didn't do this. But they didn't care. And then the nail in the coffin, my own father, took the stand, looked the judge straight in the eyes and said, I'm sorry to say this about my son, but Ethan's always had a temper. He's troubled. I tried to help him, but sometimes you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. My own father, the man who knew I was innocent, the man who set me up. But why? Asterisk, why would a father do this to his own son? It wouldn't be until decades later that I would learn the real reason, the secret that destroyed everything. When the verdict was read, the words didn't even sound real. Guilty, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Life at 19. That was the day Ethan Howard died. And the prisoner they called number 876,219 was born. It's a strange feeling, really, walking into a courtroom as a person and walking out as something else. A number, an inmate, a ghost. That's exactly what happened to me the day I was sentenced to life without parole. I remember the sound of the judge's gavel, like it was burned into my brain. BANG, life in prison. No reaction from my father, not a flinch, not a blink. He sat there, arms crossed, like a man watching a car. He sold drive off, nothing more, my mother. She didn't even show up. I didn't know if that was because she was too broken, or because she believed what they said. I never found out. As the bailiff grabbed my arm and led me out of that courtroom, I turned back, just once, to see if, maybe, just maybe, my father would look at me. He didn't. Instead, he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked out the door, like I never existed. They took me straight to Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known by anyone who's ever stepped foot in there as Angola. They call it the Alcatraz of the South. But honestly, Alcatraz would have been heaven compared to this place. A prison built on top of a former slave plantation. Massive, endless, surrounded by razor wire, and even more surrounded by hopelessness. The first thing they do when you arrive is strip you of everything that makes you human. Your clothes, your name, your dignity. The guard shoved a bag into my chest. Here's your uniform. Welcome to hell. I looked inside. A faded white jumpsuit with number 876,219 stitched across the chest. One pair of socks, one toothbrush, one bar of soap the size of a matchbox. That was it. That was all I own now. I'll never forget the first time those gates closed behind me. The sound, that deafening clank of the metal bars. It's not just a sound. It's a sentence. It's the sound of your life ending. They shoved me into cell block D. Concrete floors stained with things you didn't dare ask about. Graffiti on every wall, most of it warnings or threats. The smell of sweat, mold, urine, and despair. And the noise, God, the noise, yelling, cursing, fists pounding against steel doors. It was the sound of men who had been forgotten by the world, my cell. 6 feet wide, 8 feet long, a concrete slab for a bed, a toilet that didn't flush half the time. I stood there, staring, and realized something. I will die here. It hit me like a freight train. I was 19 years old, and the rest of my life was going to be spent inside this box. First night, I didn't sleep. How could I? All I could think about was how fast everything had happened. One day I was a kid fixing bikes at Mr. Collins' hardware store, and now I was here, a convicted murderer. A murderer who had never killed anyone, but prison doesn't care if you're innocent. Nobody does. In here, you are what the paperwork says you are. I learned that lesson fast, My first week in Angola. A man named Reggie approached me in the yard. Big guy, tattoos crawling up his neck like snakes. You Howard? I nodded. Word is you killed a girl. I opened my mouth to say, no, I didn't, but I didn't get the chance. His fist crashed into my jaw so hard I saw stars. I hit the ground before I even realized what happened. Another kick. To my ribs, then another, and another. Baby killer, he snarled. Girl killer, you're dead in here. You hear me? Guards didn't stop it. Nobody did. They just stood back, like they were watching a show they'd seen 100 times before. That was lesson number 1. In here, truth doesn't matter. Only perception does. I spent the next few months learning. The rules of prison life: keep your head down. Don't owe anyone anything. Don't look too long at anyone. And never, ever show weakness. I got jumped twice more in my first year. Once in the showers, once in the mess hall. Every hit, every bruise, felt like another nail in the coffin of the person I used to be. Some nights I'd sit on that hard slab of a bed, stare at the cracks in the ceiling, and whisper to myself, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. But it was, and it wasn't going away. I started losing track of time. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Seasons didn't matter. The world outside moved on without me. Birthdays, holidays, summers, winters, all meaningless now. But the worst part? It wasn't the fights. It wasn't the loneliness. It wasn't even the rats that scurried across my cell at night. The worst part was knowing that the man who put me here, the man who shared my last name, was sleeping in his warm bed every night, living free, while I was rotting away in this cage. And the question that haunted me every single day: why? Why would my father do this to me? I wouldn't get the answer for decades, but when it came, it would shatter me all over. Again, you know what nobody tells you about prison? It's not the violence that breaks you. It's not the filth. It's not even the isolation. It's the silence from the outside world. That's what kills you. The silence from the people you thought loved you. The silence that tells you loud and clear, nobody's coming. Nobody's fighting for you. Nobody cares. For the first year, I told myself every day, this is a mistake. Someone's going to fix this. Someone's going to come forward. They'll figure it out. I waited. And waited. Letters? None. Phone calls? Nobody answered. Visitation days? I sat there on that metal bench, staring at the gate, hoping, praying, until the guard finally tapped my shoulder and said, not today, Howard. Maybe next time. But there was no next time. Not my mother, not my brother, and God knows, my father. It was like I never existed. The only person, the only soul, who wrote to me once was Mrs. Green, a sweet old lady from the hardware store. A short note, just one sentence. I don't believe what they say about you. I read that note until the paper was so worn it nearly disintegrated. It was the only reminder that somewhere, someone still believed in me. But belief doesn't get you out of prison, and it doesn't keep you alive either. By year 2, I stopped counting the days, stopped waiting for the mail, stopped staring at the visitation gate. That's when the anger set in, a kind of anger that burns so deep it starts to hollow you out. I became someone else, someone colder, harder. I stopped being Ethan. Ethan didn't survive in a place like this, in here. I was number 876,219. A number, nothing more. I learned to fight, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. You either fight, or you become someone's property. There was this guy, Big Mike, 6'4", muscle stacked on muscle. He came after me one day in the yard, cornered me behind the laundry building. Your fresh meat, he grinned. Belong to someone yet? I didn't answer, didn't have to. His fist came fast, but this time I was ready. I ducked, grabbed a brick off the ground, and swung it as hard as I could. It hit him right above the eye, split his forehead open like a cracked egg. Blood. Everywhere. He went down screaming. The guards came running, batons out. But you know what? They didn't stop me. They stood there, watching, letting it happen. Because in this place, fights weren't something to stop. They were entertainment. When it was over, they dragged me back to my cell. Didn't patch me up, didn't clean the blood off, just shoved me in, slammed the door, and walked away. That night, lying there, ribs bruised, lips split, knuckles torn open, I realized something. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't justice. This was survival. And then the nightmare started, not from the fights, not from the violence, but from the memories. Memories of home, not the good ones. There weren't many of those anyway. The bad ones, the sound of my father's boots on the floor, the creak of his belt sliding out of the loops, the sting of leather across my back, his words, "You'll never be anything. Ethan, you were born a mistake." Over and over, that voice, that look, that smirk. Even from 300 miles away, even behind concrete walls and steel bars, he was still haunting me. But here's the thing about pain. It does one of two things. It either destroys you, or it turns you into something else. By year 5, I was no longer the kid who walked into that courtroom. I had scars, inside and out. I had fists that knew how to fight, eyes that didn't flinch at the worst things a human could see. I learned how to read people, how to know when a fight was coming before the first punch was thrown. And more than anything, I learned how to survive. But even with all that, even with the walls I built around my heart, there was one question that never left me, that clawed at me day after day. Why? Why did my father do this to me? And then, one night, sitting alone in the library, I found something that, for the first time, made me realize this was not random. This was not an accident. This was planned. A newspaper. From back home, a small article, buried deep on page 7. Local businessman Raymond Howard expands operations, acquires second auto shop property downtown. The date? Asterisk 2 months after I was convicted. My hands shook, my mouth went dry, and a voice inside me whispered, "He got rid of you to get something, to gain something. But what? And why?" I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing. This wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just abandonment. It was something bigger, something darker. And if I was ever going to survive long enough to figure it out, I had to become something else entirely. I had to become dangerous. After finding that newspaper article, something inside me shifted. Up until that moment, I'd been surviving. But now, I wasn't just surviving. I was hunting, not hunting with fists, not with bricks or blades, with questions, with obsession, with the kind of focus only a man who's lost everything can have. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why did he need me gone? What was he covering up? The more I thought, the more pieces started clicking together. My father didn't just frame me because he hated me. Hate alone doesn't make a man destroy his own blood. No, it was about money, power, control, and I was in the way. Back then, I didn't have access to lawyers. I didn't have money for appeals. Hell, I barely had soap. But prison has its own kind of network, and information is currency. There was a guy in the law library, an old-timer named Clarence. Everyone just called him Doc, not because he was a doctor, because he was the smartest man in Angola. Been inside for 44 years. Didn't matter if you needed a legal loophole or a way to make wine out of ketchup and bread. Doc was the man. I waited a few days before approaching him. Didn't want to seem desperate. Didn't want to seem weak. Finally, I walked over. Sat down at the cracked wooden table covered in dust and legal books older than both of us. "Doc, I need to know how to pull court records, property transfers, business filings from back home." He didn't even look up from his book. Just said, "Now why would a dead man walking care about that?" I swallowed, felt my heart thumping in my chest. because, dead or not, I deserve to know why my own father buried me alive. For the first time, he looked up, stared at me for a long, quiet moment, then nodded. Good answer, Doc taught me how to file information requests, how to write letters to the courthouse, how to pretend on paper like I was someone who still mattered. It took months, but little by little, envelopes started arriving. Property records, business licenses, court filings, and when I spread them all out on the library table, I saw it, the truth. The year I went to prison, my father bought out 3 rival mechanics in town, paid pennies on the dollar. How? Because one owner died mysteriously in a fire, another went bankrupt after being accused of tax fraud, and the third was the father of Sarah Jennings, the girl I was accused of murdering. Her father had been fighting my dad in court for years. They were battling over land rights, over money, and when Sarah died, her father disappeared. Gone, vanished, I sat there, staring at those papers, hands shaking, breath shallow. Oh my God, it wasn't just about me. It was a pattern, a strategy. Remove anyone who stood in his way, and when I got too close, when I started asking too many questions, when I refused to help him collect money from people who couldn't pay, he removed me too. I leaned back in my chair, felt like the walls were closing in. My father, my own flesh and blood, had framed me not just out of hate, but because I became a liability, because I was the one person he couldn't control. But as horrifying as that was, it wasn't the worst part. The worst part came a few days later, when Doc sat down next to me, dropped another file on the table, and said, "You might want to look at this, about your brother, Terry." I hadn't thought about him in years, didn't even know if he was alive, but when I opened that folder, I found arrest records, police reports, DUI, assault, domestic violence, all swept under the rug. Why? Because the Howard name carried weight in that town, because my father's hands were deep in the pockets of every cop, every judge, every businessman. But there was something else, a report buried deep in the file, a missing person case from 1983, a woman named Lisa Carter. My stomach dropped. Carter, Terry's wife, gone, never found, and just like Sarah, no body, no witnesses, no answers. And right there, right in that moment, a realization hit me so hard it nearly knocked the wind out of me. This is what my family does. They erase people when you get in the way, when you say no, when you stop being useful, you disappear. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Sarah. It wasn't just Lisa. It was anyone who stood between them and what they wanted. I slammed the folder shut, fists clenched, and for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, I didn't just feel anger. I didn't just feel hate. I felt something else, something bigger, something sharper. Resolve, because now I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every name they tried to bury, for every person whose story was erased. And I made myself a promise right there, in that prison library. I don't care how long it takes, how much it costs me. I will burn every lie they ever built to the ground. There's a moment in every man's life where the pain, the rage, the injustice, all of it stops feeling like a curse and starts feeling like fuel. That day, sitting in that cold prison library, staring at the mountain of papers that proved what I always knew deep down, something inside me snapped. I was done surviving, done waiting, done hoping someone out there would fix this. No, I was going to fix it. But fighting back when you're behind bars is not like the movies. There's no brave lawyer showing up out of nowhere. There's no magical DNA test that suddenly clears your name. It's paperwork. It's letters. It's begging people who don't even know your name to care. And the truth? Asterisk, most of them don't. I spent months learning everything I could about the law, how appeals worked, how post-conviction relief worked. Doc guided me through it. Slow is smooth. smooth as fast. He always said, but it wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about proving a pattern, a history, a family legacy built on lies, fear, and blood. I started digging deeper into my father's businesses. And the more I dug, the worse it got. Bribes, shady land deals, intimidation. There were court records that mysteriously disappeared, police reports that never made it past the front desk. Everyone in that town, everyone was either on my father's payroll or too scared to cross him. And then I found something, a document buried in a file that wasn't supposed to be there. A notarized affidavit, signed, dated, from a man named Tommy Wilkes, a name I hadn't heard in almost 20 years. Tommy was one of my father's old employees. Worked at the shop. Back when I was a kid, he was like a big brother to me, taught me how to change spark plugs. Used to sneak me candy when my father wasn't looking. And then, one day, he disappeared. The affidavit was dated March 5th, 1978. Less than a year after I was locked up. It read, I, Tommy Wilkes, declare that I was coerced by Richard Howard to dispose of certain items related to the Sarah Jennings case. I did not come forward earlier due to threats against my life. My hands started shaking. I read it over and over and over. This wasn't just a clue. This was proof. Proof that someone out there, someone besides me, knew the truth. But there was one problem. The affidavit wasn't filed in any court. It wasn't part of my trial. It was sitting, forgotten, buried, in an unrelated case file from an old land dispute, meaning nobody ever saw it. Or maybe somebody did, and made sure it disappeared. But if Tommy was alive, if I could find him, he could be the key to everything. I started writing letters to anyone who might know where he was, old coworkers, his family, churches. Half the letters came back stamped, returned to sender. Addresses no longer valid. The other half? I went back to Doc, slid the letter across the table. Any idea how to track someone down from in here? He didn't answer right away, just stared at the paper. Then he leaned back, scratched his chin, and said, Depends. You looking for a man who wants to be found, or one who don't? I don't care, I said. Either way, I'm finding him. Doc nodded. Then you start with the weak link. You start with family. It was so simple, so obvious. Tommy had a sister, Lena Wilkes. I remembered her from when we were kids. She was a couple years older, tough as nails. I asked the doc how to get a phone book. He laughed. Phone book? Boy, it's 2004. You ever heard of the internet? Turns out Angola had a basic computer lab for inmates, mostly used for GED classes. But if you knew how to sweet-talk the right guard, you could get an hour in there. I searched, and there she was, Lena Wilkes, living 2 counties over. I scribbled down the address so fast my hands could barely keep up. That night, back in my cell, I wrote her the longest, most desperate letter I've ever written in my life. Lena, you probably don't remember me. My name is Ethan Howard. I knew you and your brother when we were kids. I'm writing you because I believe Tommy holds the key to clearing my name. I don't know where he is, but I know you do. Please. I am begging you. Help me. I have nothing left, just the truth. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove the truth. I sealed it, dropped it in the mail slot, and waited. A week passed, then 2, nothing. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't think straight. Had it gotten lost? Did she throw it away? Was she scared? And then, 3 weeks later, the guard showed up at my cell, threw an envelope onto the tray. Mail call. No name on the outside, just an address. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, short, to the point. Ethan, I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe because I'm tired of running. Maybe because I'm tired of being scared. Tommy's in Nevada, small town called Silver Rock. He owns a scrapyard, but listen to me carefully. You better think long and hard about what you're about to step into. This doesn't end with your father. It never did. I read it again and again. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight because the message was clear. This rabbit hole went deeper than I ever imagined. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Because the truth was finally within reach. And if I had to burn the entire world down to get it, so be it. When I read that letter, Silver Rock, Nevada, scrapyard, I felt something I hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope, but right behind that hope was fear. Not for me, not anymore. For Tommy. For what it meant that he'd been hiding this long. For what it meant that he was still scared. Because Lena's words were clear. This doesn't end with your father. I laid there on my prison bed that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling like the air was getting thinner. How deep does this go? Who the hell did my father get mixed up with? I knew one thing. If Tommy was still looking over his shoulder, it wasn't just because of an old man back home. It was because the web was still alive, still dangerous, and if I was gonna do this, I needed help, real help. It meant finding someone on the outside willing to fight for a man like me, a man with nothing, no money, no power, no voice. But here's the thing about prison. When you've got nothing, you learn how to ask for something in a way that people can't ignore. There was this guy, Derek, ran the inmate newsletter. Smart, sharp. Served 15 years for hacking into a government server. Yeah, you heard that right. A hacker. Locked up in a prison full of murderers and thieves because he was too good at breaking into the wrong systems. I found him sitting in the library, scribbling out his next issue of The Angola Voice. I slid into the chair across from him. You still got friends out there? I asked. He glanced up, grinned. Depends. You looking for someone to move money or bury a body? Neither. I need someone to find a man in Silver Rock, Nevada, someone named Tommy Wilkes. And I need someone to listen, someone who tells stories that people actually read. Derek raised an eyebrow, leaned back in his chair. Well, now we're talking. Turns out Derek had a cousin. Worked as a freelance journalist, small crime blog, nothing major. But enough to poke around in places the police wouldn't bother looking. Her name was Marissa. Derek sent her a letter that week, explained what was happening, told her about my case, about my father, about Tommy. Didn't take long. 2 weeks. Later, I got a visitor pass slipped under my door. Asterisk I showed up in the visitation room expecting? Honestly, I don't know. Some kid with a laptop, some amateur blogger chasing clicks, but when she walked in, she was nothing like that. Sharp suit. Notepad in hand, eyes like a hawk. You Ethan Howard? She asked, pulling the chair out. Yeah, she sat down. Didn't even blink. Tell me everything, from the beginning. And so I did. 3 hours straight. No bathroom breaks. No interruptions. Every detail, every lie, every betrayal. I laid it all out. When I finished, she sat back, crossed her arms, and for the first time, I saw something. Not pity, determination. All right, she said. Let's go find Tommy. 3 weeks later, a letter came, stamped from Nevada. Hands shaking, I ripped it open. Ethan, I found him. He owns a scrapyard on the edge of Silver Rock. Lives in a trailer out back. Keeps to himself, but listen. You were right. He's scared. Scared like I've never seen anyone scared. He agreed to talk, but only under one condition. No recordings, no paper trail. Nothing that can get traced back. If you want his story, you'll have to trust me to. Write it down by hand. I'm going to see him next week. Wish me luck, Marissa. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out everything else. This was it, the moment I'd waited for almost 3 decades. But when the next letter arrived, asterisk, I knew something was wrong. The envelope was torn, smudged, rushed. Inside was just one line, scrawled in messy, panicked handwriting. Ethan, we've got a problem, a big one. Someone else got to him first. My blood turned to ice, hands trembling. No, 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 not now. Not when I was this close. I dropped the letter, stared at the wall, because right then I realized something. I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. They knew. They knew we were getting close, and they weren't going to let it happen. Not without a fight. And for the first time in 30 years, I was ready to fight back when I read those words. Ethan, we've got a problem. A big one. Someone else got to him first. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. No, no, God, no. After everything, after 30 years, I was too late. My mind spiraled. What does that mean? Did they threaten him? Did they scare him into silence? Or worse, did they shut him up for good? I paced my cell for hours. Asterisk fists clenched so tight, my nails cut into my palms. I was boiling. The next day, the letter came. Longer this time, more frantic, more desperate. Ethan, I don't even know where to start. I drove to Silver Rock like we planned, pulled up to the scrapyard, and before I even got out of the car, I knew something was wrong. Cops everywhere, yellow tape, crime scene vans, reporters. Tommy is dead. I dropped the letter, stumbled backward like someone punched me in the gut. My knees hit the concrete floor. Couldn't even hold myself up. Dead. He was dead. The one man, the only man, who knew everything gone. I picked the letter back up. The cops are calling it a suicide. Single gunshot. Found inside his trailer behind the scrapyard. But I don't buy it. No one in this town does. Not the neighbors. Not the workers at the scrapyard. Not me. Everyone says the same thing. Tommy was scared, yeah. But he wasn't suicidal. I felt something inside me crack. Something deep, something primal. But Ethan, it's what they found inside his trailer that changes everything. My hands started shaking. I could barely hold the paper steady. Tucked inside his desk drawer, wrapped in plastic, was a notebook full of names, dates, locations, deals, payments, blackmail, everything. Tommy had been keeping records for decades. Everything your father did, everything the senator did, everything the sheriff did, everyone. I blinked, mouth dry. Oh my God. I took photos of every single page before the cops could seize it. I've got them. And Ethan, what's in this notebook? This is bigger than we ever imagined. It goes beyond your father, beyond your case. This could blow the entire town apart, maybe even the entire state. My hands were ice, chest pounding. But listen to me. This is where it gets dangerous. Real dangerous, because someone else knows I have it. I've been followed. My car got broken into yesterday. Someone's trying to find these photos. Someone who's terrified this story gets out. Ethan, you need to prepare yourself, because whatever happens next, there's no going back. I folded the letter, laid it on my lap, and just sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the sounds of prison, the shouting, the slamming doors, the hum of men losing their minds. But none of it mattered now, because this was bigger than me. This wasn't just about a framed murder anymore. This wasn't just about a father who betrayed his son. No, this was about a system, a network of corruption that stretched farther and ran deeper than I ever thought possible. And now I had proof. But proof is dangerous. Truth is dangerous, because when powerful men realize their secrets aren't secret anymore, they don't send lawyers. They send warnings. And if the warnings don't work, they send something worse. As I sat there, trying to process it all, a guard walked by my cell, slowed down, and without even looking at me, muttered, "You made some real bad friends, Howard, but you made worse enemies," and kept walking. I stood up, walked to the bars, gripped them so tight my knuckles went white, and in that moment, I made a promise. You can threaten me. You can try to silence me. Hell, you can even kill me. But I swear to God, you will not bury the truth, not this time. Because for the first time, I wasn't scared of them anymore. From the moment I finished reading that letter, I knew there was no turning back. I had proof, names, dates, locations, transactions, everything. The entire rotten skeleton of that town was finally out of the closet. But the thing about digging up skeletons is, you better be ready when the bones come crawling for you. The next few days inside the prison felt different. Eyes followed me. Guards who usually ignored me now lingered. Conversations stopped when I walked by. I could feel it. Something was coming. I was sitting in the chow hall one morning, staring at a tray of food I wasn't going to eat, when Doc sat down across from me, didn't say anything for a while, just picked at his cornbread. Then, without looking up, he muttered, "Word is they're going to try something soon." My stomach turned. Try what? He didn't answer right away, just tapped his fork against the tray. Then finally, accidents happen in here, Ethan. Fires, fights, slips down the stairs. You hearing me? I gripped the table, knuckles white. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Because that's how it works when powerful men get scared. They don't sue you. They don't argue. They erase you. Outside these walls, Marissa was running for her life. Being followed, being watched. Inside, I was a sitting duck. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid there, listening to every footstep, every key turning in a lock, every shout down the hall, waiting, and then it happened. 2:37 a.m., the door to my cell clicked, not the usual key. This was manual, quiet, then the sound of shoes scraping the concrete floor. I sat up fast, and before I could even react, 3 men stepped into my cell. Asterisk, I recognized one immediately. Bobby Ray, a lifer, big, mean, stupid, but not stupid enough to do this on his own. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't about respect. This was a job. Bobby cracked his knuckles. Ain't nothing personal, Howard, but someone wants your mouth shut. I didn't wait for him to finish. I launched forward, caught him under the chin. His head snapped back, but it was like hitting a wall. The other 2 piled on, fists, elbows, knees. I fought. God, I fought like a man who knew this was the line between life and death. But 3 on 1? In a locked cell? It's not a fight. It's an execution. A fist connected with my ribs. Another split my eyebrow open. Blood poured into my eye. I hit the floor. Boots followed, over and over and over. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes. A boot coming at my face. The metallic taste of blood. The cold. Smooth surface of the floor against my cheek. Darkness. When I woke up, everything hurt. Couldn't open my left eye. Couldn't breathe without pain shooting through my ribs. But I was alive, barely, but alive. A guard walked by, didn't even stop, didn't even look at me, because that's the point. They wanted me to know nobody was coming to help. A message, crystal clear. Shut up, stop digging, or next time. You don't get back up. I laid there, bleeding into the cracks of that concrete floor, and I realized something cold, something brutal. If I was going to survive this, if I was going to bring them down, I had to become just as ruthless, just as relentless as they were, because the truth doesn't set you free, not in a world like this. The truth gets you killed. I spent the next 3 days in the infirmary, ribs cracked, eyes swollen shut, stitches across my scalp, but I was alive. And I knew they were probably more pissed about that than anything else. When I finally got back to my cell, there was a letter waiting for me. No return address, no stamp, just a folded piece of paper shoved under my mattress. Asterisk, I opened it. 6 words. This is your only warning. Stop. No signature, no name, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was from. But you know what? That was the last mistake they made, because they should have finished the job. 2 days later, Marissa came back in person. She showed up in the visitation room with a laptop, 3 folders, and eyes that told me everything before she even spoke. Ethan, it's over. We've got them. She slid the laptop across the table, hit play, and there it was, a recorded conversation, a phone call between Senator Charles Dunley and my father. The audio was grainy, but clear enough, Dunley. The problem isn't going away. Richard, if that notebook gets out, if those names get out, we're both finished. My father. I know. I told the boys to handle it, the one in Nevada's. Taken care of, but the damn reporter's still loose, and my idiot son won't stay down either. Dunley. Then finish it. Now, no more mistakes. I sat there, frozen, fists clenched, jaw locked so tight I thought my teeth might shatter. This was it. This was the smoking gun. Proof of the frame job. Proof of the cover-up. Proof of everything. Marissa opened the folder next. Inside, court motions, affidavits, signed witness statements. Lena had come forward. So had 2 former employees from my father's shop. So had a retired sheriff's deputy. A man dying of cancer who decided he wasn't taking their secrets to the grave. It was all there, decades of corruption, framing, extortion, disappearances. A dam had finally broken. We went public. Marissa said, the story dropped yesterday. Front page, local news, state news, national news. Your father was arrested this morning. My heart stopped. Wait, what? Yeah, she nodded. Him, the senator, 2 cops, a county judge, 3 businessmen, they're all in custody. Right now. I swear, for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I sat back, looked around the prison visitation room, and for the first time in 37 years, the walls didn't feel like they were closing in. They felt like they were breaking. Marissa reached into her bag, pulled out one last folder. Ethan, she said softly, your case is officially being reopened. The Da signed the motion this morning. The conviction is being vacated. I stared at the paper. My hands were trembling. Are you saying? She nodded, smiled for the first time since I met her. You're going home. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt my vision blur. Home, a word that, for so long, never meant anything but pain. Now, it meant freedom. It took 14 more days. Paperwork, hearings, processing, but then, on a cold October morning, the gates of Angola prison opened, and for the first time since I was 19 years old, I walked out a free man. Marissa was there. So was Lena. No family. No friends left from my old life. But it didn't matter, because for the first time, I had people who believed me. And you know what the first thing I did was? I stood in the parking lot, looked up at the sky, and just breathed. The air smelled different. The sun felt different, because when you've lived in a cage for nearly 4 decades, freedom doesn't feel real at first, but it was real. It was finally real. My father died in custody, no trial, no apology, no final words. Just a man who spent his last days the way he spent his entire life lying, manipulating, and rotting from the inside out. The senator? Prison, 20 years. The sheriff? Prison? The judge? Prison. The whole house of cards collapsed. And me? I started over. It's not easy learning how to live when you were never taught how, when most of your adult life was spent behind bars. But I did it, one day at a time. And the reason I'm telling you this now, the reason I finally opened up about this is simple, because somewhere out there, there's someone like me, sitting in a cell, or sitting in a house that feels like a prison, or trapped in a life they don't deserve. And to that person, I say this, don't you dare give up, because the truth, it may be slow, it may be ugly, it may come with a price, but the truth always, always wins. This was the Locked Diaries. Thank you for listening.